Hello and welcome to the Abroad Japan podcast. Probably the best way of learning about life in Japan without actually being in Japan. I'm your host Chris Broad, but joined as always by England's top Japan enthusiast, Mr. Pete Donaldson himself. Pete, how the devil are you doing? What's going down?
I'm feeling good. I'm feeling funky. We're not going to start the show what day is it today? It's
Wednesday.
Sunday, innit, mate? Sunday, this show goes out. I'm not going to start the show with playing my automaton. Chris, have you just returned from Hokkaido? Are you going back out there? I'm confused as to where you are, where you're going, what videos are coming out soon.
I mean, I did just get back from Hokkaido. Yes, we filmed a brand new episode, or a brand new series of Journey Across Japan. And it's called, I haven't told anyone this, I'll tell you though, it's called Frozen Frontiers.
Oh, nice, I like that. It's the sort of thing that I would be announcing on D-Max, on Discovery Channel. What's the title again? Frozen Frontiers.
Frozen Frontiers. You forgot it very fast there. Very worrying.
Coming up next on, in just a moment we'll have Deadliest Catch, but right now on D-Max, Frozen Frontiers. Chris and Natsuki are in a whole heap of trouble. It's Frozen Frontiers. Can I have my money now?
I forget you're a voice actor. Why the fuck? How can you do that? What makes people have the voice? How do you get the voice?
No, it's not the voice. It's the having the list of shows that's on.
See, I can't do that though. I can't be like, coming up next is a. It just sounds weird. You need to have the voice.
One affliction shuts down a teen's lungs, another attacks the nervous system of a personal trainer, and a third infection eats the blood of a health worker. It's Monsters Inside Me next, right here on D-Max.
Fucking hell. Your talents are wasted on this podcast.
Lot of trouble going on. There was one a few months ago. It was like these sort of program listings like were written probably 15 years ago, and they just go in a database, and when that old show comes back out, it basically just spits out whatever show's on, and it tells you what's on the show, and then you write a script around it. And sometimes I'll just copy what it says, because there's no point in me rewriting a copywriter's work. I may as well just fucking copy what they say. Sloppy, absolutely sloppy. AI will take everyone's jobs because of people like me. And there was one like not that long ago. It was clearly like written like a long time ago, and it was something like it was a show about interesting physiques. I think it's called Body Bazaar, right? And one of the things, so it's usually like people in like India or China who've got like who've got a deformation that looks like makes you look like Ganesh or something. Like so they're loved by their people because they resemble a god and like, you know, people with arms growing out their back and stuff. But one was like literally, it was literally just somebody transitioning. I was like, fucking hell, that's in Body Bazaar, and you're putting that out. I think it went out, and I was like, fucking hell, like, and that was the and like, why nobody's looked at that? I probably should have flagged it up, to be honest. But it's just one of those things where it's like, with like attitudes and have just kind of changed, and these kind of operations are obviously been going for like fucking 50 years, but like if not longer, and so it's kind of like. It's kind of interesting how people talk about this stuff, and it's changed so quickly over the past sort of 10 years. But you sort of see these kind of like time burps from the past, and it was actually just a bit shocking. I was like, I'm not fucking saying that. That sounds mental. I'll talk about the bloke with two arms going out of his back, thank you.
Well, I remember, I remember watching recently one of my favourite sitcoms, Only Fools and Horses. Everyone knows it, Britain's biggest sitcom. And I was watching some of the early episodes, which came out in the early 1980s, and it's just like, oh, that dialogue wouldn't work anymore quite a lot. And it was a very bizarre experience. Like, it felt really out of place.
Yeah,
things have changed. Things have
Certainly
moved on.
Good.
But what hasn't moved on is Journey Across Japan. We're still going. The last series, which came out last August, that was like heralded as the last series, and we've just gone and done it all over again. And this time we brought along Pete Premier 2 to make things more interesting, to spice things up a bit.
Make it louder.
Make it very louder.
Make it louder.
We did some cool stuff though. We went to an ice bar, which felt a bit like that awful set out of Die Another Day. Remember, he goes to like some weird fucking ice bar in Iceland.
Okay.
And then there's a space laser, and he goes surfing, and it's awful. God, what an awful film. Jesus God. But we didn't. That wasn't quite as eventful as that.
No.
But we did get to drink some vodka out of a bit of ice. It's quite good.
Nice, go.
It was really fun, like the ice bar. It's such a cool idea.
Are you sort of
piece of
I
ice.
mean, they always say you shouldn't lick anything frozen. Like, how did it stop your tongue from sort of or your lips sort of gluing it to the ice?
They must spray it with something.
Do you reckon?
Antifreeze. I don't know.
Antifreeze. Good stuff.
I'm not sure. It worked though. It did work. Maybe because you're pouring the sort of, as you pour it, the alcohol washes over it. I don't know.
Right, okay.
Did a good point actually though. I did watch one guy, one foreign tourist in the corner, like bite and devour his glass cup, and it was a bit weird. But you know, the trip was good. We went on the snow train. There's like a Harry Potter-esque steam train that went through the snow.
Oh, nice.
We went to the most eastern point in Japan, which is actually in Hokkaido, and not that great. Very fucking cold. Ironically, we went to the coldest town in all of Japan. This really pretty mundane town called Nikubetsu, and it was the hottest day of the trip, so it was kind of rubbish. We were like, oh, in the coldest town, but it's the hottest. It was like -2, and the day before it had been -15 somewhere that wasn't the coldest town.
Right.
So the whole thing didn't really work. It was a bit annoying. But we did on that day in the coldest town. We had Natsuki and Joey do a rap off against each other. It was mediated by Pete, and I think that might be the breakout moment from this series. It's no too much Volcano, but watching Natsuki go head to head with Joey was pretty cathartically fun.
Nice.
And the loser had to roll around in the snow, which were topless, which looked incredibly painful. I won't spoil who that was, but Jesus, that must have hurt. God, the screaming! I've still got the screaming in my ears.
I very much enjoyed the where Natsuki is having a little snooze and you guys are playing poker because Natsuki's just had too much fun. Too much poker.
He's all pokered out. We did teach Natsuki poker a few nights after that photo that I posted on Twitter, and he wasn't very good. He just kept going, I want to bet. Bet is good. And then he lost all his chips in like 5 seconds.
I'm going all in.
I want to bet. I like money. And then he lost his chips. He was the first one out of 5 people.
Good
Should have
stuff.
done that, actually. That would have been the highlight of the
you
trip.
think that, like, with him, like, he's quite good at pachinko, but it sounds like the old poker, he's just not interested. I want to bet. Bet is good.
It's one of those things. The interesting thing about Texas Hold'em poker is you don't necessarily have to be good to win, because often when you start playing, you don't know the rules, you don't understand what's going on, and it's not uncommon for the new guy or girl to win because they've just like all in, and then they play in a way that isn't normal.
Right.
He didn't do that. Luckily, he just lost. So thank God for that, and he was out of the game. It was a real headache trying to teach him all the rules. But should be a good series coming out in March. We're working really hard to get the series out quickly, and it was a lot of fun. It was very different to the Okinawa, like the tropical Okinawa vibe of the last series. And while that one was a sort of 1980s vibe to it, where we basically just bought loads of Spandau Ballet and Frankie Goes to Hollywood soundtracks, this series it's firmly a Japanese series, and it's very Japanese. It's going to be Japanese.
Firmly Japanese.
Music.
The Chris Broad experience.
There's going to be some Japanese music playing, and give the people what they want. We've got a story this week from Chris, good name, from Melbourne, Australia. It begins, hi Pete, I can't even say what that is. What is? I don't want to read that out. Hi Pete and Chris. Peritonitis. What is that?
Give it a Google.
And Chris Seasonbrough. I heard about Pete's recent appendicitis. That's not this Pete, that's American Pete. And I thought I'd share my own experience of having
I was really confused. I'm always ill. And so I was like genuinely thinking, did I have that? And of course, he had it out, didn't he? He had it out with it.
He had his appendix out after. I was like, they often say there's no reason you have appendicitis. Maybe it's stress, it's just bad luck. But Pete revealed after he had his appendix removed that the day before, he had opened some baseball cards from like the 1990s. And within that pack of cards, there was a stick of chewing gum, which he not only chewed, but swallowed.
Right.
And I reckon it got stuck somewhere in the wrong place and caused his body to be like, what the fuck is this? Ah! And then his appendix got ruptured. I don't know, I'm not a doctor, but it seems like quite the coincidence. Anyway, Chris continues. I thought I'd share my own experience of having an appendectomy in Japan. Oh, good God. And also, what I feel like they handled Pete's procedure quite poorly. My friend, his appendix was exploding, and they gave him some morphine because it's incredibly painful and really unpleasant. And Pete got nothing. He was like, morphine, onegaishimasu. They were like, no.
No,
And so
I want to.
he suffered in
you've
pain.
been too naughty.
Yeah. It's revenge for your streams.
Yeah.
It was 2019. I was working at Ikaiwa English Language School in Fukuoka, and I started getting severe pain in my upper abdomen. But in true stoic style, I finished my first lesson. I was taken to hospital late on Saturday night, so there was not much they could do until the next morning. An ultrasound check showed an extremely inflamed appendix. Alone in the hospital, with basic non-medical Japanese skills, the staff panicked and kept running away to print out long paragraphs of Google Translate gibberish. Very reassuring. Oh, God. Eventually, they did manage, possibly, the most Japanese way of putting my situation. Would you mind having emergency surgery? They offered me the chance to get a second opinion, but they'd already booked me in for 4 that afternoon. Oh, Jesus. Unfortunately, elderly care in Japan isn't great. Anyone with severe dementia gets dumped in hospitals. My family's unable to care for them, and so it was that I ended up in a ward full of extremely senile Japanese men in adult underwear. Adult nappies, rather. Oh, God. One in particular would wake up at 3 in the morning and gather bedpans, mugs and bottles very noisily in his bed and try to go home.
No.
When my colleagues came to check on me, one of them noted, Chris Sensei, the nurses keep saying, kakui. Do you know what this means? To which I said, yes, it means cool. Chris Sensei, it means cool. The nurses, they think you're cool. It's not hard to look cool when you're 40 years younger than everyone else, not wearing a nappy or a sushi roll short of a bento. I've never heard of that phrase. A sushi roll short of a bento. When I could eventually get out of bed myself, I realised one of the more unusual problems of being taller than the average Japanese person, because I'm 6'1". The IV drip line that I was hooked up to wasn't long enough or tall enough. Instead of the bag emptying into me, I was emptying into the bag.
Is that really? How high was this thing? How was the IV line? I mean, the difference between 6'1" and, the average Japanese, was it 5'8"? Like, I'm sorry, it shouldn't be emptying into you. That's mental. They're just doing it wrong.
This is insane. A nurse quickly tried to syringe the fluid back, but did it too fast and caused me to faint. I walked around holding the bag high above my head, which is not easy when trying to brush your teeth. All the best, guys. Chris from Melbourne with his traumatising experience from hell. I must say, Japan, when it comes to more surgical procedures, I don't want to be here for them. I've never heard many good stories. The Japanese medical system, it's good and bad. In one hand, the hospitals are clean and tidy and nice. On the other hand, lots of things go wrong. When COVID was kicking off, I don't really know how the system works, but when you get an ambulance, the ambulance just drops you off at the nearest hospital, whatever, and they go on their way. But if the hospital's full, they have to go from hospital to hospital, and it's not uncommon. Like I think we had a story on here that someone got tossed around 6 hospitals before they finally got in one. Right. But like hearing Charlie's experience with the thyroid and Pete's experience with the appendix, it's pretty scary. Pete told me a very similar story about how his IV drip didn't work, and so she stuffed it in his wrist with a syringe, and blood exploded everywhere, and it literally sounded like the most traumatizing thing I've ever heard. There was some really, really awful stories about catheters and things, and with Charlie's thyroid situation, I don't know if you remember, 1.5 years ago, she had to have one of her thyroids removed. There was a tumour on it or something. There was a tumour. It wasn't cancerous, thankfully, but it was, it was a bad time. She had this very swollen neck and she couldn't swallow. And we went to a doctor here in Sendai, and it was a very busy thyroid clinic. She went in, and I sat outside, and then she came out, and I went, how'd it go? And she went, not good. He said it's probably cancerous, and that I should come back in 4 to 6 weeks. And we were like, what? You're not waiting that fucking long if that's the diagnosis. And it was just really like this nonchalant kind of, it's probably cancer. Yeah, just come back in 2 months, we'll see. Which is not what you do. And it was really fucked. And then she went to a clinic up in, I think, Morioka. And the doctor was much kinder and said it's probably not cancer. But they didn't want to remove it. They didn't want to do any surgery on it. Even though the thyroid was just broken, it was like just doing nothing.
Snapped.
So in the end, she had to go overseas to do it properly. But yeah, I don't know. Japan, for something surgical, I don't think I'd want to be here. it just seems like there's too many horror stories. If you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But then is the UK much better? I suppose it is, if you can get into a hospital. But we got a story this week about taxis and silence, my two favourite things. What's going on? News of the week in Japan, Mr. Dawson.
Taxi driver, shut your mouth, shut your mouth, shut your mouth. The taxis, we've all used them to get from point A to point B, and you know you're not driving yourself, you're not on a train with a load of other people, but sometimes, certainly in places like London, you'll occasionally get a rather chatty taxi driver who wants to have a chat about everything. You find it more, I think, when you're getting a very, very late night cab a fair distance. People want to have a chat, but even if you're outgoing and social, everyone has those days when they're just not interested in the app, to be quite frank. It's just a little bit awkward, and maybe you've got some work to do, maybe you just want a bit of quiet time, maybe you're listening to music or whatever your reason though. Japanese... Sorry, go on, Chris.
I remember when I was the last time I was in a UK taxi, the taxi driver was just like this racist guy, and it's sort of this really awkward situation where you don't want to be like, "Nah, you're wrong." I just sort of sat there and went, Yeah.
It's awkward.
And it's just really awkward.
It is very awkward. And it's just as you get older, you have less problems with telling people to shut the fuck up. I find. But Japanese taxi operator Sanwa Kotsu understands, and so they're providing the option of a quiet ride that you can initiate with the simple tap of your finger. When you get into one of their Turtle Taxi branded cabs, you'll see a touchscreen facing the rear seats. At the bottom left of the screen is a button labelled Silent Mode. Tap on that, and it relays the request to the front, letting the driver know that you'd prefer conversation-free transport today. The other buttons also offer ways to tailor the experience to your liking. You can ask the driver to prioritise smoothness over speed in accelerating and braking, so you get less jostling. And also a toasty mode. You can have it really hot in the back, or you can have it chilly mode, so you can have it nice and cold. And also, bottom left is a button you can tap to purchase a bottle of water for 100 yen. A nice little service. So it just means that you can have a little sip of water on your journey. Nice ideas, I think, all round. There's, I think, in the northeast of England, you can get a haircut. If you've got problems with like talking to people, and I think a lot of people have quite a lot of social anxiety, unspoken social anxiety about having a haircut, because they do like a fucking chat. I'm not saying they as to be pejorative, but like it is a situation where like it is quite intimate. People are touching you, and to make it less awkward, the Brits love a chat. They love a chat, and a lot of people. I remember Craig Bellamy, the footballer, had this sort of social anxiety that's basically said, I just didn't want to leave the house. I didn't want to go and get new clothes. I didn't want to get a haircut because I was scared the man was going to talk to me. And it's a real concern for a lot of people. They just want a bit of peace and quiet. So you can order a chat-free haircut for £6 extra. I mean, it costs £6 extra, but I mean, I've had periods where I'm like that, where I don't want to chat and I feel weird about it. I don't know why that is. Maybe it's you're not in the right mood or whatever. In a Japanese taxi, it's rare for the driver to talk to me. It probably happens 1 in every 10 times. And then you get some nice ones who are good, and then you get others who just... I had one guy who couldn't speak English. We spoke in Japanese, and he talked about how he really wanted his daughter to marry a British man so we could build stronger links with the British and Japanese economy. And I was sitting there like, this is a really bizarre conversation. Let's increase trade across Japan and the UK by marrying off your daughter. Brilliant, mate, brilliant. It's cracking conversation. It's better than the racist conversation in London for sure. But that's cool. When I heard toasty mode, I was excited. I thought they literally just give you some toast, just a toaster on the passenger seat, and the driver slaps it in, gets toasting. But that's cool though. I'm surprised this thing doesn't exist already. Really, in the land where people get like their own little private ramen stand where they can sit boxed off and not talk to anyone. It seems like this thing should already kind of be here. Like I know on the Uber app you can sort of request, shut the hell up, I don't want to talk to you, right? So I'm surprised this hasn't arrived sooner, but I think it's standard for taxi drivers in Japan to just not talk to the passengers. It's almost seen as unprofessional. Unless the passenger starts the conversation. Yeah, I don't think that unless you're playing the video game Yakuza where you have a taxi side mission in Zero, I think it is. I don't think I've ever. I mean, obviously, because a lot of the taxi drivers can't speak English, and it's very much. This is for Japanese speakers mainly, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. But that's cool, though. I'll have to keep an eye out for that. That sounds pretty awesome. We'll be back in just a moment, guys, with your stories, comments, and questions in the fax machine.
Is your business advertising on the hottest marketing channel of 2023? Create a podcast advertisement. You can visit Go.
Tailored to search engine can measure the impact rated for you.
What have we got this week from our listeners, Mr. Dawson?
Hi both, this is from Edmund. After reading books like Heaven and How Do You Live and seeing films like A Silent Voice, I can't help but feel like bullying is presented as the victim's fault and very little is done about it. There seems to be some hesitation to inform adults or teachers about what's going on, and the bullying seems very violent in comparison with UK schools. Are these accurate depictions of bullying in schools or just amplified for fiction? If so, why is there a stigma against speaking out? All the best, Edmund. A lot of bullying happening in the schools. And I think Edmund's probably right. There is a lot of that kicking around in media, and it's almost kind of accepted as part of a rites of passage of sort of growing up in many places.
Yeah, I don't know really. Yeah, in Japan, it's kind of seen like, yeah, there is an aspect of it's your fault. You're not part of the group. You're not making a big enough effort to be part of the team. Right. And certainly that felt like the situation in the classroom. Like last month, I finished writing my book and I did a chapter on bullying, actually, in Japanese schools, because we had a really bad incident on the, I think it was the first day back of my second year,
right.
The start of the second academic school year in Japan. The first day back, a kid jumped off the third or fourth story building, like jumped out the window.
God.
Fortunately survived, but was very severely injured, and it turned out he'd been bullied and kids had been taking his lunchbox and all sorts. Yeah, no, it's a strange dynamic. I don't know if the people are presented as the victim's fault, though. I've never got that vibe myself. But then I haven't read these books that you listed, Edmund. But yeah, bullying in Japanese schools is a problem. The Japanese government did actually try and have a crackdown on it. I think around 2013, it didn't really do anything. In fact, bullying numbers have gone up. Maybe that's because people are talking about it more, or it's being reported more widely. But yeah, figures are actually going up, if anything, which is a terrible shame.
Yeah.
But in a collective society where everyone has to try and be the same or be part of the group and conform, if you stand out, you get buggered for it. And it's a nasty business. We got one here from Joe from Manchester. He says, "Hi, Cavalier Chris and Pivotal Pete. As a 12-year vegetarian with very basic knowledge of Japanese, I'm slightly worried about accidentally ordering meat dishes on my own, or perhaps something that looks vegetarian but is actually made with fish stock, for example. Will pointing at myself and saying, vegetarian, be enough to get me by in the worst case scenario? Are there any safe go-to dishes that you recommend? Cheers, guys. Joe from Manchester." I don't know, Pete. You're the expert.
Just take a bit of paper with the kanji on. We've said it before.
Yeah,
we'll say it again. Just do that.
Just write vegetarian on a bit of paper and just stick it out.
Yeah.
I mean, they do often ask if you've got an allergy. And maybe that's the point, to be like, no allergy, but vegetarian, yes. And then that might do it. But I don't know. It's just be strategic with your dishes. It is quite hard being a vegetarian in Japan. It's pretty much impossible being a vegan unless you get your food from the supermarket yourself. There's always going to be fish stock in there somewhere. But yeah, I can't really honestly just point at yourself and say, "Simasen, vegetarian, desu like menu dosurai." I don't know, just point at yourself and be like, vegetarian, and then sort of be like, point at the menu and be like, "Oh, what should I do?" And hopefully they'll be like, "Go here, get that." That's probably your best bet, to be honest, though, Jay. It's a tough one, though. It's a tough one. And we got one last question from Diane, who says, "Hi, Chris and Pete. Chris, in your recent excellent video, 25 kilometres across Tokyo in a day, neither you or Pete wore a mask outside. Is that allowed now? Coming over in March, and I desperately don't want to wear them if we don't have to, but also don't want to be the bad visitor who breaks the rules. It doesn't help. The current guidelines are confusing. Thanks for everything. All the best, Diane." In the scenes that we didn't wear the mask, we're always outdoors, right? If you'll notice, if we go inside a building like I think Don Quixote or the game store,
right,
Super Potato, we did put them on there. So indoors, yes. On public transport, yes. In the street, no. You're fine. The government said that you don't have to wear them outside, but a lot of people still do in Japan. They just want to be a bit cautious. But I have heard that they are going to have a strong push for getting rid of masks in the next couple of months, just because they've sort of moved beyond that now. You know, it's been like a year since they got rid of them in the UK, I think. But
will this ever actually kill the mask, do you reckon?
I think no. I don't think it would kill the mask. Well, maybe in a year or two more. I don't know. I think it's going to take a little bit longer, just because people are so comfortable with them. And in fact, I don't mind wearing them in the cold in the winter. Right, it's freezing right now. When I was in Hokkaido, where it was minus 16 degrees Celsius, I was very happy to wear my face mask, to be honest. So there are times in winter, but when it gets to summer and it's 35 degrees and you're sweltering and you've got to stick something on your face, no, it's not good.
No.
But yeah, that's how we got around it in the video. We're basically outside, and often we took them down or off when we were recording, and then when we stopped recording, we put them back on.
Right, okay.
But generally, I don't wear them out and about anymore. So, yeah. Also, this week, guys, completely unrelated to masks and vegetarians, we did release a video on sushi, eating all the sushi in Japan with Ryotaro. It's good to have Ryotaro back in some capacity, I think. But we did this challenge. It was a sponsored video by Sushiro. And you might remember, Pete, I think it was like 2 or 3 weeks ago, Sushiro had a bit of a scandal where some moron licked the plate and then put it back on the fucking conveyor belt, right? And
yes.
all the sushi restaurants have been scrambling to do something about it.
So you're lending a hand.
Well, people think we, like Sushiro, have been like, we're like, oh God, what can we do? I know, abroad in Japan, throw some money at them and then we'll do it. Actually, we filmed the video like 2 or 3 months ago.
Yeah.
So it's not the case.
You're the one who licked it.
If anyone that's Ryotaro. But no, we went there. It was a lot of fun. Do check it out. We did eat arguably too much sushi, but can you ever have too much sushi?
Never.
Yes, you can.
Oh, you can. Right,
I think they made me remove a line where I was like, "Oh, I'm so full. I'm never eating sushi again."
Oh, right.
And they were like, "That sort of undermines the whole point of us sponsoring you if you're never going to eat sushi again." I was like, "Yeah, right, fair point.
Fine.
But do check it out. That Sushiro branch is in Asakusa. It's a really cool store, and yeah, it's good. I know they're suspending temporarily, I think, the conveyor belts, right, where they just put the sushi out and they go round and round in circles. But they are very much still delivering the food to your table via the conveyor belt, so you still get the full-blown conveyor belt experience. But go and check it out. The video's not doing as well as normal. That's what happens when you release a video the night of the fucking Super Bowl. Everyone goes and watches that instead. So please go and check it out. That's all for now, though, guys. Keep the stories, comments, and questions coming into Abroad in Japan podcast at gmail.com. We'll be back later on this week. It's all over again, but for now, no matter where you might be out there in the big wide world, have yourself a great few days. We'll see you right back here to do it all over again on the Abroad in Japan podcast. Bye for now.
Farewell, all.
Acast powers the world.
In this season, the podcast
Launch.
As always, by England's top Japan enthusiast, Mr. Pete Donaldson himself. Pete, how the devil are you doing? What's going down?
I am the best person I can be at this point in the week. Chris, yesterday, me and my partner went to go and look at little puppy dog.
Oh.
Little puppy dog. So we are about to welcome into our lives a brand new little life, a little puppy dog. And yeah, we're going to have a nice time with the new dog. So I had the best Sunday. Started off, I ate last night, Sunday morning, I ate last night's curry. And then I went to a car boot, bought myself an Amstrad emailer. Are you familiar with an Amstrad emailer?
Isn't that something from like the 1980s or 1990s?
It was something from the early 2000s to late 90s. It was when email was kind of really kicking off in the country, and Alan Sugar's company Amstrad, him of the UK Apprentice TV show, decided that they were going to create something called an Amstrad emailer. Kind of like a halfway house between a computer and a
tablet
and a mobile phone, I suppose, or like it was basically just like somewhere you could do emails with a little keyboard next to your phone in the hallway. It was like an analog way of sending emails, kind of, but it was very unsuccessful. But I saw one boxed at a car boot, and I was like, I need that Amstrad emailer. I need it. I want it. I'm going to have it.
I love I've actually read Alan Sugar's autobiography a few times.
Yeah.
It's so fascinating. He's born to a working class background, East End London, built an electronics empire pretty much out of nothing. For so much of the book is set in Japan, because back then, 70s, 80s, Japan dominated a lot of the hardware.
Yeah.
And it's just fascinating hearing his stories coming to Japan. He's like, he really doesn't like Japan, for what I can tell. All the food, all the culture. There's a chapter where he's like, we sat in a hot spring. It was horrible. The water was really hot. And then we had some raw fish. It wasn't even cooked. And it's just like, this is brilliant. Listening to this. And
he's a man who Amstrad. I my first computer was an Amstrad CPC 6128, and it was a lovely little computer. But I mean, the company has a reputation of selling some pretty rough stuff back in the 80s. They would sort of take what the Japanese were doing with the hi-fi separates and basically make hi-fi separates, but in one block, so that they would be kind of like connected to each other. So like you wouldn't have to kind of like mix and match. You just had a fully made kind of like, pull out kind of system that you could that was just all one block basically. So it was like, it was kind of like getting something that looked quite nice but sounded terrible because the innards just were not very good.
Well, I think Amstrad's strategy was to basically take premium Japanese products and make them very cheap and sell them to British consumers. While Japanese people appreciate quality and premium goods, British people kind of value products, right? We want value for money, and Amstrad ticked that box. My first computer was an Amstrad when I was a kid. I don't remember what it was. I remember we'd feed in like a cassette, a bloody cassette into it, and you'd
probably
put the cassette
464
on, and
464. That was a tape system. It used to have green and red keys on the cassette recorder. So that
was it. Yeah. Getting very nostalgic now.
Nice.
But I feel bad because Amstrad were having it. They were a bit dodgy, some of their stuff, but for the most part, it was good. And then in the 90s, they commissioned some sort of computers, and they used, I think, hard drives made by Seagate, and Seagate had fucked the hard drives, which basically didn't work, and so they sold thousands of computers that didn't work properly, and it destroyed their brand pretty much overnight and made them into this sort of unreliable brand and I think they sued Seagate later on down the line for a few $100 million or something. But
they used to.
Unfortunate.
When you had like I think it was something like so they dominated the 8-bit market along with the Sinclair Spectrum, and we didn't come here to talk computers, but we're doing it anyway. So Otaku's pin your ears back. They dominated the 8-bit era with some, really solid stuff. But I believe Spain or maybe Greece had an agreement with the government that companies who sold 16-bit machines would not be, or machines with a certain amount of RAM in them, certain amount of read random access memory, readable, writable memory, and it would be cheaper to kind of sell them, and you could make more money off them basically because the tax was much lower because it was a new system, and they wanted to update all of the computers that were available in that country. I think it was either Spain or Greece, and so Amstrad started shipping computers with extra memory, which would technically make them 16-bit machines, but I'm fairly certain they didn't wire up the pathways for that RAM.
It didn't work.
So it didn't actually... It contained that RAM, but it had no way of accessing it. I believe that was the case. It's a lovely little quirk, just proper like Barrow Boy kind of attitude from that company. Just sort of, oh, come on, we'll just stick a bit of RAM in it, 16-bit in it. But yeah, and in the way that like Mario was to Nintendo, the big kind of like poster boy for Nintendo, and Sonic was the animal that represented Sega. Around the like 8-bit, 16-bit era, companies and computer manufacturers, they tried to make their own kind of system seller. They tried to make their own character that would sell video game systems. And I keep meaning to sort of make a little video about it on YouTube because there's not that much stuff on YouTube about this one character called Roland. Roland was the Amstrad little guy, but it was literally just whoever came to make video games for Amstrad would just sort of go, can you just rename that a game about being in a cave, rolling in the cave, please. And they pretended that even they had no similarities across the whole thing. Roland looked different in every single game. It was just shitty kind of like platforming games, and they would just say, yeah, that's Roland in this one. It was really funny how they would just brand up Roland on the ropes, Roland goes square bashing, Roland in the cave,
so
Roland through time, and it was just all the games. They didn't have anything to do with each other, but they were all called Roland because they tried to create like this mascot that was going to sell systems, like Horace did, who went skiing and went all over the gaff over on the Spectrum. Really cheap stuff. I love it.
It was a simple time. If only a simple time when companies can be bothered to make actual characters of their own that were good. But I'd love to get Alan Sugar, titan of industry, to come to Japan and do like a travel series where he just bumbles around Japan being unimpressed by the food, the cuisine, the people. What is this?
Yeah.
This fish? Oh, it's horrible. This is. Oh God, it'd be fucking brilliant.
It's always just so disappointing. These people who have the capacity and the finances to do whatever they want. You know, they have the capacity to go wherever they want and experience the whole world and have all the experiences that the man on the street can't have because they don't have that amount of money, and they absolutely hate being abroad.
Well, I can't blame him in the sense that back in the day, to come to Japan, I forgot about this when I was reading the book. To go to Japan from the UK, you have to always go via Alaska, like back in the day, because obviously the USSR, you couldn't fly over Soviet Russia and you couldn't fly over that way. So they had to stop in Alaska and Anchorage, and it must have been one hell of a journey. And I remember reading that and thinking, oh, thank God we don't have to do that now. And now we do. Admittedly, we don't have to stop in Anchorage. We get to fly over it. But now the flight route is exactly the same way that he would have done back in the 80s. So it's all come full circle. We've got a story this week from Luke. Tune in next week for Retro Tech with Pete Donaldson.
Yeah.
We've got a story this week from Luke from the UK. Begins, hi, Chris and Pete. My name's Luke, and I'm from the UK. And I'd love to congratulate Chris and Charlotte on the wonderful news. That's right, guys. If you missed it, we're engaged. We haven't talked about it much, apart from every social media post, but it's good news. It's very happy. I'm very happy. And let's carry on. Back in late December 2019, I watched an old video of Chris's where he mentioned an app called Hello Talk. I decided to give it a go, and soon I was speaking to a girl who lived in Tokyo. We decided that I'd help her with English. We became pretty good friends, texting each other almost every day, and decided that when I visit Japan in May 2020, we would meet up. We'd continue to speak to each other almost every single day, and we'd both expressed a desire to be more than just friends. When Japan reopened, this is brilliant, with Hello Talk, right? When I did the sponsorship thing, or I mentioned them years ago, they specifically told me, like, make sure you don't encourage this as a dating app. And, like, the only thing anyone has ever used it for is to hook up with people or flirt with people.
Is that right?
Because why not?
Interesting. Wow.
You can blame them. I mean, it's just you can see why. Anyway, when Japan reopened its borders, I booked to visit for 2 weeks in January 2023. That was just last month. We met up as planned, and she suggested we make a plan to meet up every other day while I was in Japan to spend some time together. We made plans for the next 3 times we'd meet before we said our goodbyes. I thought it went really well, but the night before we'd planned to meet up again, she texted me and said she couldn't go and that she was sorry she couldn't meet up. I responded and was promptly ignored for the following 4 days. She hadn't even opened my message after those 4 days, and I messaged her again, asking if she could at the very least let me know if she was okay, as I was worried about her well-being. I actually received a response to this, just 4 words: I'm okay, I'm sorry. Knowing now that she was in fact just ignoring me, I asked if I'd done something wrong. 6 days pass, and it's around 6 p.m, the day before I'm due to leave Japan, when I finally receive a response. She basically tells me that she struggled to accept the real me, and that I was more shy and less talkative than she expected, rounding it off by saying she felt a gap because she set her expectations too high. Oh my God, I still enjoyed my time in Japan anyway, doing everything we'd planned to do together alone. Had I known she would ignore me the entire time I was there, I probably would have strayed further away from Tokyo during my trip. Love the podcast and all the videos. Luke from the UK. A warning there on not to flirt with people from Hello Talk, lest you get rejected and ruin your trip to Japan. Sorry to hear that, Luke. That's just a really shit thing. That's just harsh, isn't it? Oh, sorry I didn't meet up with you. You were shit. Like, fucking hell.
I don't know, but I think you build these things up and you build these people up in your mind. And I think Luke seems refreshingly sanguine about the whole situation. Like, he's sort of not... He doesn't express a particular, like, that was gutted that I somehow didn't provide what she needed from me, and he was not particularly offended by it, by the sounds of things, and investing that amount of time in something. I mean, I just hope that your language sort of levels kind of improve. But Luke, but I'm glad you're slightly relaxed about it all.
Have you ever had
taken it all in your stride?
Online date like that went into like in real life and then didn't go as planned? I think I've had
I
that.
guess it's kind of like people having like dates, isn't it? It's a bit like just having normal kind of Tinder dates, so isn't it? Where you talk for ages,
True.
and then for whatever reason it just doesn't click, and you throw the rarefied, pressurized air of a pressurized air of a new country, a holiday, and a language barrier as well. I mean, wow, it's. It really does ramp it up. So, yeah, well, unlucky Luke, but, plenty more chats in the sea, so to speak.
Yeah, plenty more biscuits in the tin.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
Yeah, there you go. Use Hello Talk for educational purposes, not romance. I remember years ago, it must have been 2015 when I first came across it, I did have like a thing with a girl on there, and we talked for, it must have been, days on end. And then one day she just sort of ghosted me, and I was like, all right then. Fucking Hello Talk, god damn it. Brought nothing but pain. Pain to the world. Damn this app. Give me some news, Pete. Cheer me up. Enough Hello Talk. Enough romance gone wrong.
Well, I mean, I guess we're over Valentine's Day. We're past that, but
well, especially after this failed romance.
We're talking all things. We're talking all things dates here, Chris. Is it okay to split the bill on a date in Japan? A survey asks what women and men of different ages think. What's your policy on splitting the bill? Do you have to have gone out with somebody for a little while before you start splitting the bill, or do you kind of start splitting the bill and then as you become a codependent relationship, you kind of rotate back to 50-50? How does that work?
No, I make them pay for the bill from day one, and then just go for them every time. No.
All right,
I don't know. I think with Charlotte, we absolutely do it sort of 50-50. I don't know. Maybe I do it 60% of the time. Maybe she does it 60% of the time. I don't keep count, but we do. I think it's 50-50 pretty much. And I'd say, I think on the first dates and whatnot, I always try and pay, and be nice. But I don't know. What does Japan think about it all?
Well, Japanese dating app, another dating app, an actual dating app, so to speak. Omiai recently conducted a poll of 217 men and 247 women who have a romantic partner, asking for their take on the situation. Some people may think that young women may be of the mindset that it's the guy's duty to pay. Female respondents in their teens and 20s were actually the least likely to say that they wanted men to pay for everything. That sentiment started rising rapidly among women in their 30s, though, and kept going up from there. So if you are going out with a 75-year-old woman from Japan, she will expect you to front all of the bill at Mackie D's. Fortuitously, for the women who want the guy to cover all dating expenses, the proportion of guys who said they want to do so was slightly larger than the women in their age group on the other side of that arrangement, with the exception of those in their 40s. For some reason, people in their 40s go, nah, you're all right. The majority of women in their team said their preference is to split the costs more or less evenly, which was the largest response among 27 women as well. So it's 20-something women as well. So it just seems to be, as opposed to 20, 30 years ago, there's more willingness to split restaurant checks and other expenses as people as we grow and learn as a nation and as an international community. There is a steady but gradual transition to the man covering more and more expenses among older couples. So there you go. Maybe that's society. Maybe that's just something deep within us. Maybe it's our own preconceived ideas about the male-female connection.
Certainly in Japan. Yeah, that's the way it's always been.
I mean, none of this deals with same-sex relationships or everything else in between. So maybe we'll need another one from that. Maybe Omiai need to pull their finger out, so to speak, and find out.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say that this is more about Japan sort of becoming more gender equal in the sense that before, like, men would have to pay for everything and whatnot back in the day. But also on the flip side of that, when you go to Japanese work parties, which I haven't done in a long time, the female staff are expected to be like play like a hostess role,
Right.
Which I forgot to write in my book, and I'm really annoyed. I need to go see if I can re-edit my bloody book. But
Just release a Google Doc, mate.
Use ChatGPT to write the whole thing next time.
Yeah, exactly.
Female colleagues, even if they're a supervisor, they'd be expected to basically rush to the bottle of sake, rush to the bottle of beer, and pour for everyone at work parties. And I always found that a bit weird and a bit like, shouldn't we help? And the guy's like, no. And the women were like, no, you sit there. It's our job now. I always found that a bit like, this is not good.
It's not great, is it? I mean, it's servitude thought of in a slightly different way, a more honorific thing to do in Japan. I would suggest that has nothing to do with it, and it's very much just old men being old men. And I mean, I think women, I'm not going to speak for women, certainly not, wouldn't even attempt it. I would say they'd probably be, I think they'd probably be more likely to want to split the bill if they got paid the same as men, which they don't. So almost the world over.
Fair point, but this is interesting, and equality is getting better in Japan generally, slowly but surely. We're back in just a moment, guys, with our stories, comments, and questions in the fax machine.
Ta-da.
When it comes to growing your brand or business online, Squarespace is the all-in-one platform with the tools it takes the guesswork, detailed, ultimately grow.
We have in the UK.
No.
Always having them in there with and the bride always has that big egg, like Queen Amidala job going on.
What is the name of that shrine? I think it's Meiji. Yeah, sorry, Meiji.
Meiji, just Meiji, right? Okay.
Meiji's the chocolate company or the castle.
Yes,
Take a pick. I like just a big fucking Himeji chocolate shrine. Now that's something. That is where I'd have my wedding. I don't think I've ever been to a Japanese wedding, like a pure Japanese wedding in the sense. I went to my friend Nick, his wedding last year, but he's not Japanese, and neither is his wife Angela. So it wasn't like a true, authentic Japanese wedding. From what I understand and hear, Japanese weddings are quite formal. They don't all dance around to 80s music like Whitney Houston and Come On Eileen, like all the other bloody weddings I used to work on. There's no it's way more formal. There's a lot more speeches, endless speeches, and it's sort of just everyone eats cake. But also weirdly, they get just foreign white guys or whatever to play like a priest at the wedding, and get them to sort of officiate the wedding, and which I've always found a bit odd. But it's kind of this trend to make it feel like an old, what I didn't know. One thing I didn't know in Japan is people don't get engaged. They don't do the whole engagement ring thing. Because when I mentioned to Natsuki that I proposed to Charla and got her a ring, he was like, "Wow, married!" And I was like, "No, not yet. One day, engaged." And then Natsuki and Charla were like, "Oh yeah, they don't do that in Japan." And I was like, "What? What? They just go straight from 0 to 100 basically, and sign the documents and then have a ceremony. So it's a lot faster. I think some people do get engaged, but for the most part, it's not a part of Japanese culture. So
interesting.
Yeah, but I haven't been to one.
Straight in. So how does that actually work then? You sort of go, "We're getting married tomorrow." How does that happen?
And they go, "Yes," and then you go down the market. You go down the. No, I don't know. I don't know the ins and outs of it. I think
you have to buy 2 rings.
You don't. Yeah, you'd have to buy all the wedding ring. You get the wedding ring, but you don't get the engagement ring.
That's the expensive one, isn't it? The old engagement ring. That's the punchy
save money. But also at Japanese weddings, one not so good thing is the guests have to pay for the wedding. They turn up and you basically pay to attend it, right? Which is probably good for the married couple, right? But it's quite expensive. The one I went to is quite a bit. It kind of felt good to pay for their wedding a little bit, but on the other hand, Japanese weddings expensive. To pay feels a bit weird, doesn't it? If I was going to have a wedding,
it does. You'd be annoyed if you just night do as well. If you're just being allowed to the night do rather than the church. I'm not paying for this.
You get a discount for that. It'd be like if you paid if you come to just the evening, you still have to pay some money. So it's expensive. But I haven't been to one, and I don't think I ever will. I don't think I know any Japanese friends are getting married anytime soon, unfortunately. Although I don't like weddings, given that I worked on 200 at Leeds Castle. But when I have my wedding, probably next year in the summer or something, I'll make sure it's good. I always said I wouldn't really have a good wedding. I'd just do like a really small one for like 10 people in a room. But the more I thought about it, the more I'm like, well, it's a good chance to have everyone there for like a good reason all in one day, right? If you know what I mean.
You can't scrimp. You can't scrimp and save, really. You've got to go all out, or you've got to do,
I'll just make all the guests pay, though.
Hopefully.
I'll make them all pay. Sounds really sinister. I'll make them pay.
I'll make them
pay. We got one here from Brandon. From Virginia. He says, greetings, Chris, is cool co-host and Pete's platonic partner. One thing I've always wondered was how you introduce yourself in Japan as a foreigner. I doubt it would matter much for a tourist, but do you adapt by saying your family name first or keep the Western convention? Is there ever confusion that people might think your family name is Kurisu? Congratulations on your engagement, Brandon from Virginia. I mean, people in Japan know a lot of Western names. I think Chris is one of them. So they wouldn't assume my first name's just Broad-san.
Yeah.
Hello, my name's Broad. No. So and I introduce myself just going, Kurisu Tomoshimasu. Kurisu Tomoshimasu. Like,
Tomoshimasu.
Tomoshimasu. It's kind of like the more polite way, right? Of being like, Chris Desh. Chris Desh, yo. One thing you should never do is go, Watashi no namae wa Chris Desh. Like, nobody does that. You don't go,
the thing that you
name.
literally get taught in the Japan lessons.
I know, right? It drives me up the wall. There's so much crap in the textbooks that you don't actually do, or you shouldn't do.
Right.
It's just awkward, and that's one of them. And that's usually like the first way you know if someone's good at Japanese or not. They'll introduce myself like, Watashi no namae wa Peter Donaldson Desh.
Never mind.
Oh, just
Could
go
you say
Pete
namae
Desh
wa?
Just say Pete Tomoshimasu or Pete Desh.
Tomoshimasu. Oh.
Keep it simple. But that's it really. I'll just go, Chris, innit? Abroad in Japan, Desh. Abroad in Japan or Chris. Something like that. I haven't introduced myself recently, but you use the phrase Yoroshiku onegaishimasu about 5 times in a sentence. So that's the only thing you need to know. Say your name.
All right.
Say Yoroshiku onegaishimasu.
Right.
Job done.
Fine.
Got one last question here from Fahim, who says, hi, Kent, Chris, and Pennine Pete. Chris, congratulations on getting engaged to Charlotte. I especially love the fact that it happened at Durdle Door. My question is, where do you plan to get married? Japan, UK, Canada, or elsewhere? Thank you very much, Fahim. We are going to get married in Hartlepool. Pete is going to be the vicar. It's going to be great. Hartlepool Docks.
It's hard, isn't it? You've got 3 different places that you could do it. You could go neutral, Switzerland, Philippines.
Do it in the middle.
I don't know. Yeah, just meet in the middle somewhere. One of those kind of weird islands.
Well, the middle point would be Kazakhstan or Kyrgyzstan. So I think I should invite friends from Japan and the UK. Actually, I met an Australian guy recently when Charlotte needed to get her ring sorted out, refitted or whatever. We went to a place. There was an Australian guy, and half his family were in Australia, half were in the UK, and they met in the middle in Dubai, but then they decided they couldn't do it in Dubai for whatever reason. I think it's quite difficult to do a Christian wedding there, so they did it in Georgia instead, and so they all met in the middle in Georgia, which is kind of cool. So we'll do it there. Why not? Mix things up a little bit. Why not? Or we'll do it right in the middle of Canada, the UK, and Japan, which is probably the absolute North Pole. And that'd be pretty badass on an icebreaker ship. Why not?
Is there a way to? There must be a way to figure out. Find out midpoint between countries.
Japan, Canada, UK.
Yeah.
I reckon it is.
What's halfway?
Greenland. Or yeah, Greenland, isn't it? Final answer. Final answer.
Yeah, final answer. It's quite hard, really, isn't it? Yeah. All right.
What have you got? Why do that?
There's loads of websites that is like halfway between 2 cities. Based on driving direction. That's not going to work. So find out what's halfway between 2 or more locations, how to find the halfway point, geographic midpoint calculator. There's just a lot of...
This is what AI was made for.
You've got to type in like longitudes and latitudes and stuff. That's no good. That's no use for crying out loud.
I'm going with Greenland. But no, the actual wedding, for the most, it's going to be in the UK, I think. Just because family are there, and I think it'll be much easier to do it in the UK for the most part. Don't know if it'll be cheaper, but I mean, the UK has got some really nice wedding venues. Not that Japan hasn't, but a lot of the wedding venues in Japan are like these really crappy, tacky, fake castles. Like when I used to live in Sakata, and I don't know if you remember seeing them yourself when you were there, Pete. You drive down the road, and there's like 4 around the town. There's these big church-looking buildings. And they basically look like love hotels because they're probably built by the same company. So the exterior looks like a Christian church. The interior just looks like a shed, and that's where a lot of people get married, in these kind of bland, depressing places. There are some nice venues, but a lot of the wedding venues, even here in Sendai, aren't overly great. Whereas the UK, you've got like castles and a garden and a palace. And those 3 locations. But I think wedding venues, and speaking from experience working at Leeds Castle, like the wedding venue was pretty damn good. So yeah, I think a castle could be good. Yeah, or do something like, I don't know, a battleship or something like that. Can I bring my
sword? Can I bring the sword I brought?
You
can
fucking wave the sword around. That'd be great. Well, I kind of want to theme it though. I want to do like an 80s themed wedding, but without it being tacky. But it'll definitely
in a castle. I'm trying to think what an 80s. Was there any 80s castle-based films? 80s castle films.
I'm thinking no.
Ghost romances. Films set in castles.
In the 80s.
There's a lot of films set in castles.
It's just turning into one great big Google ad, this episode, isn't it?
It really is.
These really obscure things to this bloody wedding.
When was that out? 1981. That's not even 80s. Oh. Couldn't dress like Alan Rickman. I guess I'd have a spoon.
But yeah, I think a castle in England, job done.
Castle in England.
But we'll see.
80s,
we'll see.
An 80s wedding
themed
in a castle in England. Lovely stuff.
Tick, tick, tick. Job done. Yeah. I remember
Thanks for him.
working on some themed weddings, and some of them were really like tacky. There was one that was a candy themed wedding, and every table had like pick and mix sweets on it, and it was kind of cool.
I'm into that. But
it was also a little bit. I don't know, it didn't feel right. It felt a bit like cheap.
I think drinking. The thing with weddings is like you start drinking prosecco at like midday, and you don't stop. And
it's just your regular life, Pete.
If you've not prepared with if you're not prepared yourself with a load of antacids, you may find yourself in a bit of trouble. That's all I'm saying.
Very true, very true. Yeah. I think I'll stay away from the candy-themed wedding. It was weird. Like people spent £21,000 on this wedding, a nice venue, and then everything was like candy-coloured and just shit. It just looked really bad. And one of the benefits of working there was I got to eat a lot of the candy that night. It made life more fun. Most weddings are all the same, and I think that's another reason I didn't like weddings. Like when you've worked on 100+ weddings, you see the patterns, you see they all use the same music, they all have the same first dance to the same stuff, and it was just a bit like, oh god, cookie cutter bullshit. But mine won't be like that. I'll make it good. It'll be great. It'll be like a Journey Across Japan episode on steroids. Keep the stories, questions, comments coming in to abroadjapanpodcast@gmail.com, guys. We'll be back later in the week, still over again, but for now, no matter where you might be out there in the big wide world, have yourself a great few days, and we'll see you right back here to do it all over again on the Abroad Japan podcast. Bye for now.
Japan is a Stack production and part of the Acast Creator Network.
Wow.
Hello and welcome to the Abroad Japan podcast. Probably the best way